All right, what is up, everybody? This is a new edition of Shot of Sports, your weekly dose of sports. Whether you're a casual fan or a diehard, we're going to try to bring you the latest and the best in hot takes. I'm your host, Jalen Nicholson Bourne. I have my co-host with me, Chris Pittner and Sam Strash. I did Hawk Talk with these guys when I was at University of Wisconsin Whitewater. I'm obviously with the Utah Jazz now and the Utah Hockey Club as a broadcast assistant, and I'm going to let them two introduce themselves as they see fit. All right, go ahead, guys.
Sam, go ahead.
Oh, Chris, I was gonna let you do the honors to start, but I mean, if you so choose, I guess I'll go with it. Yeah, my name's Sam. I currently actually work as a instructor at the University of Wisconsin Whitewater as a teacher's assistant right now, but we're slowly working our way into adjuncts, making things happen like that. Yeah, I hosted our university radio station's sports analysis show, I guess you call it, syndicated sports show, Hawk Talk, for a couple of years. I was an analyst on there for one semester, and that was all it took for our sports director Drew to say, you know what, throw the kid in the fire, see if he floats. So I'm excited to get back into some form of broadcasting, podcasting, you name it, things like this. I'm really happy to get back into this. I also work very, very part-time, probably like one or two short form content uploads per month for a minor league baseball specific YouTube channel called Minor League Minute. If you guys want to go check that out, that channel is about 700 subscribers or so. My buddy Corey Sparks from ESPN Beaver Dam runs that channel. We got some guys from UW Oshkosh. Cedric Granger, the sports info director for Maryland Eastern Shore, also does content for us. So go check it out. It's some good stuff. But Minor League Minute, used to run Hawk Talk. Now I teach public speaking because what the heck, why not?
I mean, there's not much better you can do as a broadcaster than teach public speaking, to be fair.
Oh, definitely.
Huge skill. What's going on, y'all? I'm Chris Bittner. I've also hosted Hawk Talk for this. This will be my sixth and final semester. It's the last dance. I've done Tuesdays my entire way through. I'm also sports director. Sam was my assistant last year, so we got to work together quite a bit. That was a good time for sure. Call some football, call some basketball together. That was a fun time. Other than that, I'm on another show called Warhawk Talk that I do with some of the other Whitewater guys. We just talk Whitewater sports for 60 minutes. And yeah, excited to get into this. It should be a good time for sure.
So also the ats are our Instagram. So if you want to give us a follow on our personal account as well, our link in the description will be our actual podcast Instagram where you can follow up on updates. We'll be posting polls and hopefully reels so we can get you all's interactions, and you can DM us any questions you have or any guests you want to see on here if we can try to get them as well, and we're going to do that as well. So we're going to start off with the Elite Eight. Michigan State fell to Auburn. Izzo was looking for his 15th comeback from behind win in the tournament, NCAA tournament, in his career. Houston thrashed Tennessee, which was pretty surprising to me. I thought that Tennessee was going to actually upset Houston and go to the Final Four. I actually had them in my bracket in the Final Four. So I almost had my Final Four almost perfect, but Michigan State and Tennessee lost that one for me. Duke destroyed Alabama. It is safe to say that Cooper Flagg is the real deal, and he will be the number one pick. And I will think that he probably will change the organization the minute he gets there, whether it's the Wizards, the Jazz, hopefully my organization, the Hornets, or what's the other one? The New Orleans Pelicans as well.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick here. I apologize. I have a sneaky spot that I think he could end up, and I think it could. If Philly's pick lands in the top 6, they get it, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think they might, because you know how there's this conspiracy, how they've rigged the lottery in the past, potentially. Hearsay, of course, but I feel like there's
Ron even said something on Pat McAfee the other day about, hey, I don't know how Cleveland got the number one pick in 03, but they did. And then same with Patrick Ewing in the 80s, but continue.
Yeah, I think there might be some shenanigans going on, and Cooper Flagg ends up a 76er. Mark my words here. This could end up blowing up in my face.
But... Well, I think there is some merit to that, and that's simply because we've seen and heard some rumors about Joel Embiid and about Joel Embiid's availability going forward as a 76er. He has missed more games in his career than he has games played. which is really something to think about. And Cooper Flagg is a guy, yes, he's not a traditional like 5 in the rotation. He's going to be a 4. He's not really a tall 3. He's a true power forward. He's a true oversized wing. He's not big enough to be the center. He can be the stretch 5 in certain lineups, but you can't really replace Embiid with Cooper Flagg, but you can definitely use him as a stopgap at that 5 spot. If the Sixers rumors about them making Joel Embiid medically retire are true or somehow come to fruition, that is something to keep an eye on, Chris. I actually really like that take. I think that's a take that should get a lot more merit than it does.
I also do want to say that there's a certain podcaster on that team that needs to be replaced probably at some point too. So he can just ride off into the sunset and film podcasts for the rest of his life.
Oh, definitely. Paul George is, as a Paul George fantasy owner, I'm appalled at just how abysmal his season has been as a Philadelphia 76er. And yes, that's another way that if Cooper Flagg would end up making his way over to the Sixers, that's another spot he can replace too. Like I said, he's not truly a 3 in the rotation. He's really an oversized wing, so he fits perfectly as a power forward in any standard rotation. But I mean, Paul George is pretty versatile. He's played the forward, some lineups, some rotations this year for the Sixers because they've had Kelly Oubre, KJ Martin, guys like that. So I think Cooper Flagg to the Sixers actually makes sense. I'm very glad you brought that up.
That's very actually interesting because it's wondering like what are they going to do with Joel Embiid, in my opinion. Are they going to move with Cooper Flagg with Joel Embiid, or are they going to get rid of Joel Embiid and start over with Cooper Flagg? So that's a good question. That's actually a good point to actually bring up. And I did want to say Florida did come back from a 10-point deficit well, it wasn't an upset, but they found a way to win that game when they were pretty much counted out of it at that point. So I will say that Cooper Flagg is the real deal. But the most surprising thing for me in the tournament was St. John's and Calipari. We all knew that the Kansas game was not going to be an upset. We all knew that for a fact. A lot of people, if you knew basketball, then you already knew that wasn't going to really be an upset because Kansas wasn't that good at all this year. I
would say that game was a toss-up in my opinion. I really think either team could have won that, and it just ended up bouncing Arkansas's way.
Well, with the way Kansas looked throughout the entire season, I could see why people would say that wasn't really an upset because they really did not look like the Kansas of old. I mean, even when they went to BYU, they got thrashed. I mean, it was pretty bad. Now, I will say a surprise was Michigan going all the way to the Sweet 16. I didn't see that coming. I thought they would have lost to San Diego, which they should have lost to San Diego, but they found a way to come out and pull that game out. And how about Ole Miss coming out of the blue? You know, they started off the season not the greatest, but they found a way to get to the Sweet 16 to play Michigan State. And, you know, it was pretty impressive from what I've seen from them. So our final
they held their own.
Yeah.
They really held their own, Jalen. I was not huge on Ole Miss this year by any means. And it simply stems from the fact that the SEC did not deserve to have 14 teams make it.
That's exactly how I felt, Sam.
Yeah.
I really just thought the SEC just had way too many teams. But then each one of their teams pretty much showed why they deserve to be there. And I know we had a discussion about this on Hawk Talk yesterday that we just didn't think the seeding was done very well this year at all. And then there were teams like Creighton where they had a bit of a rougher earlier season or conference season, and they got underseeded, and they had to play against a team like Louisville, who everyone almost counted as a shoo-in in that game, and it was a blowout right from the start.
You know, Louisville would be my biggest disappointment, 100%. This tournament, they were my biggest disappointment because, yes, you're playing in Rupp Arena. You struggle in Rupp Arena. It's Louisville versus UK. That's a big rivalry in the state of Kentucky. But that's a home game. That is truly a home game when you think about it. You have Creighton, who has to travel 10-plus hours from Omaha, Nebraska, and take off all the way to Lexington, where Louisville's just got a 2-hour drive up 64. That's something that I thought Louisville honestly had a shot at the Elite Eight. I honestly thought they had a shot at the Elite Eight, and the reason why is simply because of that home court advantage. Now, Creighton decided to really ball out in that series. Stephen Ashworth especially, he was reminding people that 24-year-olds can play college basketball too. 6 of 13 from the field, 4 of 8 from 3, 5 rebounds, 22 points in that game. Ryan Kalkbrenner with 14 as well. Neal with 29 leading the way for Creighton. So they had 3 guys in double digits, 2 guys in 20 plus, and that just wasn't enough for Chucky Hepburn and the Scraps to overcome. But I'd still consider it a disappointment on that front. Going back to Ole Miss here, like we talked about, the SEC did not deserve to have 14 teams. And regardless of what the tournament success shows, that does not negate the fact that the SEC should not have had all these teams. And same with Arkansas is one of them. They beat Kansas. They beat St. John's. That they're one of those teams that did not deserve to be there. And despite the tournament success, that's irrelevant here. The fact that the SEC got 14 teams, I don't care that they were the best conference in college basketball. We should have had 2 A10 teams in. We should have. We should have had George Mason and VCU. I don't care that VCU lost to BYU right away. We should have had both of those teams in. George Mason, if I'm not mistaken, went on to at least make it to the Final Four of the NIT. So we should have had at least 2 A10 teams. The ACC was, for lack of a better term, bad at basketball this year. The Big Ten was fairly good. What was that?
Other than Duke, of course.
Oh, well, yeah, they're the anomaly here.
They're
but
the outlier.
Exactly. So I don't know. I guess I don't know why we still give the SEC merit here, even though they had 14 teams making. I'd say out of those 14 teams, Ole Miss, who finished really low in the SEC this year, they had a good tournament run. That's why they're a 6 seed. Ole Miss, Arkansas, Vanderbilt even
I actually
didn't really deserve to be there. A lot of people did. And the reason for that is because St. Mary's offense is so stagnated. But their defense is more than enough to overcome that, which is why I still was confident in figuring that they were going to win that game despite being down 11 or so right before halftime.
What I learned this year is just offensive teams really had the power this tournament, with the exception of Houston, because they're just a different beast. A lot of the other offensive teams, like Alabama, had a great run. BYU had a great run. You look at Arizona, they put up not the best fight against Duke, but the best fight we've seen so far. A lot of the teams that are offense dependent had a lot better of a run than, say, a St. Mary's or a team that I thought, or a St. John's, for example, that I thought, because of how stout their defense was, they were going to be able to make a run. And St. John's lost in the second round. I don't think many people saw them losing that early in the tournament. I personally was a little skeptical of them, but thought that they just had enough defensive firepower and the head coach aspect to be able to make a really deep run in this tournament. And I was so wrong about that.
Well, it's simply because St. John's in the KenPom rankings, they were the number 1 team in terms of defensive efficiency. They were the best defensive team in the country, and you could see it with guys like RJ Lewis down low. I mean, the team itself offensively was never that good. That's something we all kind of have to realize now, is that the offensive scheming, the schematics of that team were just never that good on offense. It was good enough to run through the Big East, and because they got hot, that was the way to win the Big East tournament, was just get hot, right? That's all you needed to do. UConn was struggling this year. Marquette really hit the brakes hard. They ran into a wall. Honestly, they ran into a wall pretty dang hard.
They looked
going into the conference tournament. Oh, they were a top 10 team. They were almost in the top 5 at one point. If I'm not mistaken, they were ranked 5th at one point.
After that was the game.
Yeah, and then they lost to Iowa State in Iowa State, and they held their own. And that's when I thought that if they can take Milan Momcilovic and Keyshawn Gilbert, that team into a game on their home turf, that this Marquette team was going to be gross this year. And then another Shaka Smart failure, another loss in the first round. They've only made it into the Sweet 16, I think, once in Shaka Smart's tenure there.
Not even second round. They lost second round last year. I'm pretty sure they got upset because they were a 2 seed. I think that was last. It was either last year or the year before. They were a 2 seed.
Last year they were a 2 seed and beat Western Kentucky
in the first round, right?
Yeah, in the first round they beat Western Kentucky, but Western Kentucky even gave them a run for their money for a little bit. I mean, we got to be serious with ourselves here. Yeah, they made the Sweet 16 last year. They defeated Western Kentucky. They beat Colorado fresh off of an upset over Florida. I don't know if you guys watched that game last year, but Walter Clayton Jr. versus KJ Sampson was must-watch television. And then they ended up losing to the NC State Cinderella run in the Sweet 16.
Which is a game they still should have won.
Correct. Yes. And that's but that's the beauty of the tournament, though. That's the beauty of the tournament is there's a lot of shit that happens that should not happen. And that's what makes March the best month in all of I'm going to just call it professional sports. We know what we're talking about here. It's the best month in sports, period, is March.
I can agree.
The best month in sports.
Sure. You just have so much going on the entire time. It's wild. It really is. But this year, there was just such a lack of upsets in both conference tournaments and in the NCAA tournament. I had a segment on this on Hawk Talk yesterday, and I called it Nails on a Chalkboard because I was just so frustrated this year with how chalk the tournament was. Because I'm someone in my bracket that loves to go for upsets. And let's just say, Sam, there's a reason why I'm in 34th place in your bracket pool right now.
You know, I'm like 33rd for the very same reasons. But, I mean, the upsets were still there. The upsets were still there. We can't ignore that. I mean, Drake over Missouri. The problem is it was the popular upsets that happened.
Yeah, who saw that coming?
The upsets that everyone thought was going to happen.
The only one I didn't think was going to happen was Arkansas over Kansas. That was the only one I didn't think was feasible. And it happened. That's the only exciting part of the tournament was Arkansas making the Sweet 16, being this year's Cinderella, for lack of a better term. But Drake over Missouri still happened. Arkansas over Kansas still happened. Both of those games were 7+ point games. Colorado State the same way over Memphis, and then nearly beating Maryland. They nearly became this year's Cinderella. McNeese over Clemson. That was one of the best first round games I think I've ever watched. Watching McNeese, who a lot of people, a la Brendan Donlevy, one of our former colleagues over at the radio station, his terminology, McNeesing everywhere during that game. He was really letting me have it because we watched that game together, and he was so excited about McNeese last year when they got the break speed off of them, and we were all giving him flack for it. And he didn't say a word for about 3 hours after McNeese got blown out by 40. But then this year, he was letting us have it. He was letting me have it because of how high I was on Clemson. And that game, Clemson, 18 points in the last minute. And they lost by 2.
They had lost by 2, ended up losing by 2, which was actually crazy. See, I didn't see what I was thinking about previous years when I was thinking about the McNeese pick. I had picked them like 2 years in a row when they made the tournament. I'm not sure if they made it 2 years in a row, but I know
this is their second year.
Go ahead.
This is their second year, I was saying.
Okay, yeah. So I had picked them at least twice the past 2 seasons, and I wasn't falling for it this year. I said, you know what? I'm not falling for it. And they won. So
that's how that usually goes. That's how I was with Ole Miss. I was debating. I watched the games with my roommates the first 2 days and a couple of our friends. And I was sitting here. One of them had Ole Miss to the Sweet 16. I'm like, no, that's just not happening. North Carolina is going to beat them first round. Your dream's going to be over. And now that's another discussion. North Carolina should not have gotten in. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think that's honestly surface level for the most part. But
yeah,
it was just
that's just a take. That's just a take. Yeah. And then UNC they blew out San Diego State, and that's honestly San Diego State UNC. Regardless of who won that matchup, I thought they were going to beat Ole Miss. I thought they were, and UNC. I mean, I was talking to a student of mine, and we were talking about the bracket going into. It was the day before day 1 of games, so it was the last day of the first 4. And we were both agreed. We were both in agreement that this was not the UNC teams that we were watching back in November, back in December. That was not the UNC team that went 1-12 in quad ones this year.
You know what it was? San Diego State, I believe, was a quad 2 team this year.
They were. That's what it was. That was the what's the term I'm looking for, man? Slow start to the morning today. But that was a game that was not expected to end in that fashion, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I can say that my dad had to eat it when every time Michigan State kept winning because he had Bryant going to the Sweet 16. He was telling me he was adamant about, Michigan State is going to lose to Bryant. I'm telling you, they announcers, all the people I've been watching, Bryant is it. Bryant, and they get thrashed.
Well, so they hung with Michigan State actually for, I don't remember if it was
a little bit.
For the first 10 minutes, it was pretty. For the first 10 minutes, it was pretty close. I will say it was what was it, about like a 10-point lead that they had?
Something like that. I mean, it got up to the blowout stage by the end, and that was kind of the first round. Even was when I realized like St. John's and Michigan State aren't who I thought they were, because St. John's, I forget who they played against, but they really struggled to pull away in that game. I'm like,
they played against Omaha.
Yeah, they struggled to pull away against Omaha for the longest time. And it ended up like the score didn't reflect how close the game was for the majority.
That's correct. And that is honestly, if I'm being dead serious, yeah, it was a 30-point game. But at halftime, they were down 5. Omaha was only down 5. They were out shooting St. John's in the first half. And this is what we're talking about, where St. John's is not that great offensively. They're just not. They ended up having a great second half and shooting 37.8% from the 3-point line, which kind of propelled them. Whereas Omaha in the second half just completely fell off a bridge. 25% shooting, 13 from 3. Only 5 threes made all game. And if I'm not mistaken, they were all in the first half. And that was a game that in the first half, and even pre-game, I was confident in saying that if there was any 15/2 this year, it was going to be that game. It was going to that game. I was fairly high on St. John's going into the tournament, but I was not high enough on them to think that maybe they were safe from being upset. And they ended up getting upset in the second round, but that's besides the point. I liked Omaha. I liked their team chemistry. They beat up a trash can after every game they won this year. They just go to Walmart, find a really, crappy little trash can, and just take it to town in the locker room after wins. And that rode them to their first tournament appearance. I think Omaha, if I'm not mistaken, is a team from the Summit
League. Yeah,
the Summit
promised to make it to the tournament.
Yeah, and the Summit League for basketball has got NDSU, North Dakota, SDSU, South Dakota, and a couple other schools in that realm. I think Omaha, we'll be seeing more of them in the near future. We'll be seeing a lot more of Omaha, and this is just the beginning of it. And they were taking it to St. John's for a little bit. I'm cool with saying that game was a lot closer than the 30 points that it was.
Yeah, I can agree. So our Final Four will be Duke and Alabama, and we have Florida versus Auburn.
Duke and Houston.
Yeah, Duke and Houston.
My bad. Duke and Houston. And on the girls' side, you have Texas and South Carolina, and then you have UConn and UCLA. Well, I thought the USC team was going to be able to beat UConn, but I guess without Juju, that was going to be a tough task, especially with Paige Beckers. So we're going to jump right into the MLB opening weekend. We have the Cubs winning their opening day. Yeah, no, they win their opening day?
With the exception,
they won. They won
10-6
against the Diamondbacks.
The overseas series.
They had their overseas series. They lost 2 to the Dodgers, but the domestic they won 10-6 on actual MLB opening day. You all are Brewers fans, as we can see in the background with Chris Pittner. Not a good start to the season right now.
Me and Sam were talking before the show. We are not feeling undaunted right now at all. We are very daunted. Very daunted.
I've seen a couple of buddies back home or a couple of buddies back in college right now posting the thank you fans post already. I know Drew Best, who would be probably avid on here at the moment, would have a lot of choice words to say about the Brewers, but it's still early. It's only April 1st, which is April Fool's Day, so they're probably April Fools in you right now.
Maybe they'll finally
But
win a game for April Fools.
hey, they play again today. They play the Royals again, even though last night didn't go the greatest for them. Even it's the NL Central is going to be a toss up in my opinion. You got the Cardinals, obviously, who's going to be looking to be better than they were last year as they underperformed. The Cubs, for the past 2 seasons, had the same record of 83 and 79. They're really underperforming. They were actually supposed to win division both years. This year, actually, the 2 years that they actually were, got those 83 and 79 and lost to the Brewers. So you got the Reds. Obviously, they got some pitching. They lost Jonathan India, but they did get back a pretty good starter, in my opinion, with who is Brady Singer. I think he's going to be have a big role with them as well. And then you have the Pirates with Paul Skeens and Jared Jones, and they got Mitch Keller. So they have a bona fide three-headed monster, I will say. But I don't think the Pirates' bats are there just yet. I know they probably have a lot of draft picks, a lot of prospects down there in minor leagues, just like how the Orioles were. So they're probably rebuilding like the Orioles, but you don't really hear too much about them. But so yeah, I believe the NL Central is gonna be a toss-up. What is your opinion on that?
Chris, yeah, I'll let you take that one, Chris.
Yeah, I think this division is going to be one of the most intriguing because I don't think there is a clear-cut number one. If I had to pick right now, I know it's generic, but I probably would go with the Cubs just because they have a bit more firepower offensively than a lot of the other teams. But they're concerned, and this has been a concern for them for a long time. It's just the bullpen. They have not been able to properly address the bullpen, and it's costed them already. It costed them on Sunday in their game against the D-backs. Everyone thought that was over. Then all of a sudden, I want to say they scored 8 runs in the last 2 innings and came out with the W over Chicago. I saw something on Twitter about that. It was like a freezing cold take. It was like Kyle Tucker hit a home run. They called it the dagger, and it was not the dagger at all. But as for the Brewers, I think there's definitely reason to be concerned. I think more so in the offense. Jackson Chourio striking out like Joey Gallo, those first few games is just really not helping his case at all right now. He looks lost a lot of the time. He's swinging for the fences too much. Then for pitching, they got, a ragtag group of guys out there right now. It's not really looking the greatest so far, but Woodruff is still out. Tobias Myers is out. Savali just went to the IR. I think the rotation will kind of fix itself a little bit with time, but I do have to say Nestor Cortez ignoring the media after Saturday's game was also a bad look. If I had to pick a team right now, I'd probably pick the Cubs, but watch out for anybody in this division because I think anything can happen.
Yeah, I'm like you said, Jalen, I'm not high on the Pirates yet. I think the pitching is good. I think the Pirates pitching is a lot better than people give credit to. And Bubba Chandler probably making an appearance this year will be very beneficial for that team going forward. But the Brewers, yeah, Nestor Cortez definitely leaving early. Not a good look. Not a good look whatsoever. And then, granted, he tried to make up for it the next day by coming back and having a meeting with the media right away in the morning with McCalvy, Todd Rosiak, all those guys on Milwaukee Sports Media, and lit himself up a little bit for that, whatever that performance was. I don't even know what to call it. I don't think
might be a very generous word.
Yeah, and I don't think I will ever watch a baseball game again where the first 3 pitches of the game are home runs. And they weren't wall scrapers like we saw in the first game at Yankee Stadium this year. They weren't wall scrapers like that from Austin Wells and from Anthony Volpe especially. That hit did not deserve to leave the yard. But that's besides the point. These were mashed. Paul Goldschmidt, Cody Bellinger's especially was mashed. And then Aaron Judge might be the greatest hitter I've ever witnessed in my lifetime.
I have a lot to say about that Cody Bellinger trade, but I'll let you all finish.
So I think I know where we're going to go with that. But I'm not so certain about the Brewers yet, but I can't jump to conclusions yet. It's game 5 today. It's game 5. We have Chad Patrick on the mound versus Michael Lorenzen, who Lorenzen, historically speaking, isn't the best against Milwaukee. He's good for about 2 to 3 runs in the game, probably go about 5 innings, especially in his last 5 starts against the Brewers. He does have one outing from 2023 where he gave up 5 runs on 7 hits, still had 5 strikeouts, but threw 100 pitches in that one through 5 innings. I mean, it's going to be time. This is like what Christian Yelich said. This is the rough stretch. Every team goes through a really rough stretch every year. Every team also goes 60-60. It's what you do with the other 42 that matters, unless you're the 2024 White Sox, right? That's something that's going to happen. We're not going to have
the White Sox being too.
Yeah, they're looking good too. They're looking good too. And that's a group of ragtags that just they threw together and hope for the best. But I think this Brewers team will be okay. It's just if we get to, let's say, May 10th, for just putting a button on it, let's just say May 10th. If we get to May 10th and this is still a problem, then we're jumping to conclusions. Then we're really jumping to conclusions. But you think about the past, 2019 Nationals, they went 19-31, won the World Series. I'm not saying the Brewers will do that. I'm not saying I ever had expectations for them to do that this year. But that did happen at one point or another in history. It's going to happen. Teams get slow early on. Teams stink early on. It's what you do in the back half of the season and how you get hot going into October that really matters.
Yeah, and I want to add, my frustrations aren't so much with the players right now. It's with management and ownership for cost cutting. And the thing that really ticked me off yesterday was when the Brewers do this every year. In game number 1, they give Mark Attanasio, the owner, an interview. I think it's always during the third inning, I think. And he's out there. We're down like, what was it, 5-0 at that point, I think? Something like that.
Ish.
Yeah, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5-0. And he's talking about the new pickleball court that they built for the staff. And that was just, I don't know, that rubbed me the wrong way, personally. I was really frustrated. And the quote that he put out about providing a summer of fun and passion for the fans, that was
thank you.
I posted that on Twitter yesterday. And
thank you.
He's really rubbed me the wrong way, especially in the last month, because it seems like he's kind of grown apathetic to what the fans want here, and that's a World Series championship. Or, in my opinion, just a series win, because I was at the one game that they won, and just to see how the stadium came together for that, it felt like we won the World Series that night. And in reality, all that happened was we won a wild card game.
Well, I'm going to get into my little spiel about Cody Bellinger and the Chicago Cubs. One of the stupidest moves I've ever seen as a big market team. You're telling me you can't have a Cody Bellinger in the same lineup as a Kyle Tucker when you have the third largest, I will say it again, the third largest city, the third largest amount of payroll in the entire league, one of the oldest franchises, one of the richest franchises. And we constantly have to play, no offense, like the Brewers and doggone rely on small moves all the time. We're not a small market.
Yeah, I wanted to say that about the Cubs too. If I was a Cubs fan, which I'm not, I would have a lot of frustrations with how ownership runs that team, because they should be up there with the big fish of the league, the Yankees. The Padres love to spend. The Orioles spend at times. The Tigers spent when Illich was still there. The Dodgers obviously spend, an entire Briggs truck and a half pretty much. If I was a Cubs fan, I'd be livid with ownership and how they refuse to spend money and they treat themselves like a small market team when in reality they have one of the biggest fan bases in the country. I'm sure their revenue is incredibly high. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but with how many fans the Cubs have, every road game they go to, basically, there's a Cubs, there's like a showing by the Cubs fandom. And I really don't think it's fair to the fans that they treat this team like the Brewers, and they don't ever make any super significant moves. And if they make one, they have to cancel it out by getting rid of someone else. And that just does not compute in my head.
How about moving Michael Bush to third base and having Cody Bellinger at first? Because last time I checked, isn't that where Bush started with the Dodgers? Was third base?
It
So I
was
don't
either
want to keep.
second or third, yeah.
So I don't want to constantly keep hearing some fans that didn't want Bellinger to be here for Kyle Tucker, or some of the people I know talking about they wanted his money off the books. Why? Because you're going to get the same result as you did last year. All you did was replace Cody Bellinger with Kyle Tucker. You didn't add to it. You just salary dumped to a team that was 83 and 79, in which you were supposed to win a division. But you constantly keep talking to me about saying that we're going to win a division. Our goal is the division. We're the favorite in a division. But you don't act like it.
I think they need to look bigger than just the division, because the division this year looks to be probably the worst division in baseball, in my opinion. I think that they should aim a lot higher than specifically, we're trying to win the NL Central. And this goes for the Brewers too. You want to aim higher than that. Your goal shouldn't be to win the division. You're not the Pirates where you finish 75 and 90, whatever. I forget what the number is that 75 wins. I think it's
87.
87. Yeah, 75 and 87. The Cubs should have a lot higher expectations than just, we'll win 88 games and get bounced in the wild card.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely asinine and absolutely ridiculous. So I will say that. And then the Alex Bregman thing, it came out that Alex Bregman had 3 teams that MLB Network said were on his list. He said it was the Cubs, it was the Red Sox, and it was the Detroit Tigers. Imagine where the Cubs were when he signed his contract, when landing spots and total contract of what he was actually going to sign with. Third, last, wasn't even close. So you telling me you got outbidded by the freaking Detroit Tigers, who lost almost 90 games a year ago before last season?
Well, I don't know necessarily if it was a winners versus like who's rebuilding thing with the Tigers. I think it mainly had to do with AJ Hinch and his relationship with AJ Hinch. I had Alex Bregman pinned to Detroit. I had him pinned the tail to the Detroit donkey for the entire offseason simply because of that relationship with AJ Hinch. And it was a match made in heaven. They had a hole at third base, needed to be filled. Or even a hole at second base, and they ended up going with Gleyber Torres instead because it was a little bit more in their price range instead of $40 million a season for a guy who has dealt with a little bit of injury history. Like nothing crazy, but it's there. It's something that has to be at least noticed and at least looked into. And then on top of that, you also don't know the production you're going to get from Alex Bregman going from a very hitter-friendly ballpark in Houston, where we're talking about a short porch. Yes, there's a 20-plus foot wall there, but the Crawford boxes are like 310 feet away from home plate. Moving from a short porch to Detroit, and Detroit is a very pitcher-friendly ballpark with how deep center field, left center, and the gaps are. And now instead he goes to Boston, much easier place to hit. The Cubs are an easy place to hit too. Wrigley Field is, the wind likes to swirl a little bit, but it mainly blows out towards the lake. It mainly blows out there. That's something that would have been interesting if Bregman would have ended up with the Cubs. But that whole thing with Detroit was solely with AJ Hinch. It was solely with AJ Hinch. He wanted to go play for him again. He won a World Series with them. Say what you want about the asterisk. I still don't think the Astros are the champions that year. That's me personally, but he won a World Series with AJ Hinch. That's a bond right there with the coach for life. A lifetime bond. That's why Detroit was so high up in that race.
Yeah, I could agree with that, but all in all, it's going to probably end up being a Dodgers World Series repeat anyway. The Yankees might actually have a real shot because they actually have some real offensive production, and hopefully they have some pitching that can last throughout the season, because losing Garrett Cole early in spring training, that really knocked them, I wouldn't say out of the ALCS favoritism, but I will say it probably knocked them back just a little bit, just right around where the Orioles are. You can obviously make a case for the Red Sox to be there as well, Alex Bregman being there, but a struggling Rafael Devers right now, it's pretty. I didn't actually. Well, I'm not gonna say I didn't see that coming because you're starting a new role, and some players can't adjust as quickly on the fly when they move from third base to a full-time just designated hitter. It kind of messes with you mentally, but we'll get into all of that. Hopefully, he changes. Hopefully, he actually plays better throughout the entire season, and because they're gonna really need him. So we're going to jump now into the NBA playoff preview. Let's see where who are your hottest takes in the NBA playoffs?
Oh, man.
For what you can see so far.
I want to talk about, what do you guys think happened with Memphis really quickly before we get into that with Taylor Jenkins getting fired? Do you think it was a player personnel thing? Because I understand firing him after the season, but they did it right before the postseason started. And I don't know. The whole thing just seems really fishy to me.
It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. And if I'm a Bucks fan, do I want Taylor Jenkins next year? I mean, that's the thought process I'm going through is, yeah, we have Doc Rivers for another year or two after this one, but Taylor Jenkins, man, what he did with this Memphis team, leading them through a very rigorous, up until this year, really, Western Conference for multiple seasons, getting them, they were a top 2 or 3 seed last year, if I'm not mistaken. And granted,
last year
they were
injuries.
Last year they were pretty bad.
Last year they had so many injuries.
Okay. So that was a couple years ago then.
Yeah, 2 years.
That they were like a 2 or 3 seed in the West, and I just don't understand. Like, he had to have lost the locker room. That's the only explanation for early coach firings like this. He had to have lost the locker room, and we've seen it before in baseball. Ron Renicky gets fired midseason by the Brewers. They bring in Craig Counsell to be the manager in 2015. Yeah, they stink, but it's better than having a guy who you can't even look the dude in the face when you're in the clubhouse. I mean, it's Adrian Griffin was the same way last year with the Bucks. I mean, this isn't anything new. This is I almost want to call this the new wave of coaching hiring, like the coaching carousel, and it might spread to other professional sports soon too. It's slowly lingered. Like, there's been certain situations like Urban Meyer with the Jags where he didn't have the team. He kicked his kicker, quite literally. He physically assaulted Josh Lambo, allegedly, of course. But he kicked his kicker, then goes clubbing in Cincinnati after losing on Thursday Night Football, or Columbus, excuse me. He ended up driving up to Columbus for that. At his alma mater's former coaching spot, Ohio State. He gets fired midseason. Nathaniel Hackett gets fired midseason. Like we said with the Bucks, Adrian Griffin, they were 30-13. They were the best team in the East at one point, and he got fired.
Meanwhile,
he let go.
We're looking at Doc now, just barely treading water. I'm not even kidding. Jalen or Sam, I think I'd rather have you guys coaching the Bucks at this point. And the play that really sold me that I'm not a Doc guy anymore, and I never really was, to preface. I had low expectations, but like the play against the Suns at the end of the game where Giannis and AJ Green both tripped over each other, and it's clear that one of them didn't know where they were supposed to go. It's the last play of the freaking game, man. Come on. You got to have everyone in the right spot. You got to have something drawn up. It's clear that they don't have preparation and they don't have execution, and that falls on the coach.
And yet they're still in the thick of it, really. They're still 8 games ahead of the Bulls, or 7.5 ahead of the Bulls, who are the last play-in team right now. The Bucks currently have a playoff spot. They're 4 games ahead of the Hawks. And we're getting to crunch time. There's 8 games left in the season. We're going to get Bobby Portis back pretty shortly off of his suspension. And ideally, Damian Lillard's injury isn't as bad as previously thought. That's the rumor swirling right now, is that, yes, it's deep vein thrombosis. That's a scary injury, a truly scary injury. Same thing that Wembanyama is dealing with right now. But the way it sounds is like it's not that bad per se. It sounds like it's not the end of the world for the Bucks, and that Damian Lillard might even come back in the playoffs. He might. And granted, they might have to win a round. They might have to win 2 rounds. But there's a chance Dame comes back. I think the hot take for me is that, yes, Doc Rivers is not the greatest coach in the world. We know that. We definitely know that. But the Bucks feel like a team that, if put in the right situation, given the right path, I think they can make the Eastern Conference Finals. Given the right path, it is doable.
So what would you say the right path is then? Because I don't see this team beating the Knicks more than twice, because that's who they'd be slated to face as of right now.
I think the Knicks are just a little tad bit overrated, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. They definitely look better on paper than the Bucks do, especially right now. But I mean, we've seen Giannis willed teams do crazy things before. And I think the right path, though, to answer your question, Chris, the right path is to be a 4 or 5. And you're only a game and a half behind the Pistons and 3.5 behind the Pacers. We had the Pacers number this year for once. We did. We beat them 3-1 in the season series.
Detroit the last 2 games of the season. So as long as you tread water through these next, I believe, 6 games, you can basically, you still control your own destiny in that regard. And like you said, I feel a lot more confident about playing Indiana this year than I do against New York, because the Bucks on Friday, I believe it was Thursday or Friday last week, lost to the Knicks when they didn't have Jalen Brunson, and that's a little concerning. DeLon Wright had his season high in that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. But I think you got to think about it this way. So we'd be the 4 or 5 playing the Pacers, ideally playing the Pacers in the first round. Then you got to face more than likely Cleveland, or, call me crazy on this one, I'm still high on the Magic despite their current record. I'm still kind of high on the Magic. Nothing much changed from the team last year, barring injuries, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Franz Wagner is out. Has he been out for a while, or he at least was hurt early in the season? I don't know how bad it was.
Early in the season, both him and Paolo were out for a stretch.
Okay.
But yeah, like you said, their team is basically more or less the same.
It's more or less the same, and they were pretty damn good last year.
I will say, though, sorry to interrupt you, Mo Wagner is out for the year. Okay. So they got the Spurs tonight, Wizards Thursday. They play host to the Hawks next Tuesday. Then they go Celtics, Pacers, Hawks. I think that's 4-2 right there. And then they would play the Hawks in the first playing game as the 7 versus 8. Winner gets the 7 seed, losers the 8. No, the loser would have to play the 9-10 matchup, so they still.
Yeah. Well, but I don't think the Heat or Bulls are winning that game. So it's the loser is going to be the 8 seed in my eyes. But if the Magic end up as the 8, I like them beating the Cavs more than I like the Hawks beating the Cavs. Do I think it'll happen? No. But, I mean, it's wishful thinking in a way, but I like the Magic. I think, we've seen it before. We watched the Heat upset the Bucks as an 8 seed. They beat them in 5 games, right? That was a couple seasons ago. That was last year. We had Drew, Chris, and Giannis all on the floor together as one team. And that team, correct me if I'm wrong, the Heat made the finals that year.
They did.
Yeah. So
they beat Boston later on. I forget. Yeah, it was that year. They beat Boston, didn't they? In the conference finals. Because
all it takes is a team getting hot then. And I think the Magic pose a chance of getting hot. This is the stretch to do it. The momentum shifter. So I think they win tonight, win Thursday. They should win next Tuesday against the Hawks. I think the momentum shifter is next Wednesday at 6:00. They host the Celtics. They win that game, there's a momentum shift.
Well, I say they're probably the team that I think that can make the biggest run out of all the, underlying teams and other the teams down in the play-in tournament is probably the Warriors.
I think they're the 6 right now, I believe, but they're only a game back of Memphis, who's in the 5. So if they could somehow, and Memphis is only 2.5 back of the Rockets, who sit at 2. It might be 2.5, might be 3.5, something like that. I don't have the standings up right in front of me, but if the Warriors are hot enough at the end of the season too, they could perhaps make their way into a home court advantage spot as well.
Yeah, because the Warriors, what were they like? They had some absurd record. They were like what 11-2 or something like that with Jimmy Butler when he came in. Yeah, that's good. I think that's going to be a big difference maker in the West. I'm not hot on the Lakers at the moment. I do believe that they might get bounced in the first round. I know there's a lot of smoke out there saying, "Oh, they're probably going to end up being a deep team that runs. They get the right path." I don't think it matters what path the Lakers get. I think they're going to probably get bounced in the first round because they just have no size in the interior. And when you look at all the West Coast teams, they all have size in the interior. They all can play defense. They all got, can offensive rebound as well and shoot the three. Can the Lakers do both of those things? That's the key. And the way LeBron has been looking lately, he's been looking pretty average, looking regular. So it's going to be probably very interesting with the NBA as it comes down the stretch. But we're going to get our final thoughts here. You got anything that you all want to say? Oh, yeah, I will say about the Taylor Jenkins thing is that I was surprised the most after he came off like a 40-point win against the Jazz, which was, I think it was last week. He came off 40-point win against the Jazz, and he gets fired, I think, the next day. So that's what caught us all. Even my organization was caught off guard with that. A couple of the guys that I worked with were saying that's a very twisted turn of events. Something must have happened that they will probably internally investigating or something like that. But we probably don't have the answers to that to probably after the season is over. But we'll end that on there. Final thoughts, anyone? Go ahead.
There'll be some bombshell that comes out probably round 2 of the playoffs after the Grizzlies get eliminated, after they get run by, I don't know, let's just say going to the Western Conference here, after they get run over by the Lakers in the first round or something like that. There'll be some bombshell, but I want to tie back to a little bit of baseball talk here with my final thoughts today. I was talking to a buddy of mine about this last night. He was asking me about some things about the Brewers. Lest we forget that there is no Milwaukee Brewers without Mark Antanasio. Without him, there is no team. Without him, there's no new stadium lease till 2050, and guarantees from both the organization and the ownership groups, I should say. There's multiple ownership groups involved, and the state of Wisconsin to update and upgrade the stadium to get it back to a certain standard to where it's really a top tier stadium in the league again. That doesn't happen without Mark Antanasio. As much as I really don't like the guy for how he decides to put together the player personnel, we have a double-A team more than likely playing at the Milkmen Stadium in Franklin, right? We probably have a double-A team at the Rock if it's not for Mark Antanasio. Now, there's rumors about him becoming commissioner in 2029.
Mark?
They want Manfred out. They want Manfred out in 2029.
I do.
There's multiple owners. There's multiple groups in the MLB that are going to push for Mark Antanasio because he is a smart business guy. He's smart with what he does. Unfortunately, part of his smarts involves stealing sand from Long Beach and having it transported to his properties because he doesn't want to pay the proper people. However, allegedly, of course, that's besides the point. I think if Mark Antanasio becomes commissioner of baseball in 2029, granted, this is ways out, but if he becomes commissioner of baseball in 2029, the entire league is going to feel ripples and a massive ripple effect for decades in a negative way. I'd almost rather have Manfred. That's my thought.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. Every time I get the final thoughts, I go blank on something. I think the NFC North this year is going to be even better than it was last year. I think all four. I said this last year actually. All 4 teams had a legitimate shot of making a case to make the playoffs, and all 3 wild cards could have been from our division. I think that only reigns more true this year. I think that the Bears made the necessary improvements on the offensive line and defensive line to put Caleb in a position. They've hired the right head coach, in my opinion, to put him in a position where it's sink or swim time, buddy. You got to either put up or shut up. And if the Bears are bad this year, I think it falls a lot more on Caleb than it does on anyone else.
I can agree to that. I will say my final thoughts. I got two of them. I'm actually ready for the WNBA, which is actually insane to say, which is pretty crazy. But I will say the torpedo bat is probably going to be the best thing for baseball. You
Correct.
already see the amount of offensive production you see with the Yankees. Nico Horner had about some good solid contact last night. Dansby Swanson hit like a 418-foot homer against the Diamondbacks with it. So it's going to make its way around the entire league, and I feel that the pitchers are only going to. I feel that I'm not going to say they're going to get rattled more, but I will say that the league may let them get away with using maybe sticky if the
I was
offensive
just about to
production
ask.
comes up.
I was just about to ask, do you think that that's going to be something that we see in baseball again? I think they should. I think they should. I'm not saying I've used it before in my playing days. I'm not going to say I've used it before. But what I know is that pitchers' arms nowadays are turning into just pork belly. Just meat falls right off the bone.
Yep.
And the sticky stuff isn't necessarily just about getting pitch grip and getting more RPMs on the ball. It helps the shoulder. It relieves pain. It works in that way. So if we're letting them use the bats, why not?
Yeah, you might end up seeing the sticky stuff, or they might give them something to use that makes them be able to get an advantage as well. I think it's a really good thing for baseball. This is probably the highest amount of attention baseball is getting at this moment. Obviously, it all started with Shohei Ohtani just coming into the league and making it globalized. But yeah, the more offense, the better for the league. And, I'm excited to see what's next for the MLB as well. So I will say that'll do it for this episode of Shot of Sports. We are back now. I'm happy to have Chris Pittner and Sam Strash on. We also have three more other co-hosts as well. His name is Nazir Spencer. Pretty sure if you follow our YouTube page, you've seen the short that he did introduce himself. We do have Drew Best and Nolan Kopolowski. They were not able to make it today, but we will see them in the near future. And I'm excited for what's to come with this podcast.
Yeah, it was fun for sure.
Right on. Let's have ourselves a week.
All right. You all have yourselves a good day, and, stay safe out there. It's actually snowing out here, which is actually insane. But
I think we're pushing about 45 degrees here in Whitewater.
Yeah,
something along those lines.
Congrats.
It's a little nippy in Kenosha today too. So,
all right, guys. We'll see you all later. Have a good one.
Yep. Peace out.